Hi, I'm Jose Mendoza. I'm here with Kai's team. We'll be watching a pre-recorded session developing a SAS deep learning MedDRA encoder for patient narrative. Once the recording completes, Kai will be answering questions that you submit in the chat window. So let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Today we are going to show you our work regarding deep learning to classify adverse event from patient narrative. My name is Case Hatem. I work at USA Food and Drug Administration as a computer scientist. I'm expert in industrial engineering, advanced statistical model, machine learning, data analytics, and operational research. Most of my work is dedicated to help our organization in addressing a new technology in addressing a crucial problem in the drug development.
And folks, I'm Tom Sabo. I'm a principal solutions architect. I've been doing work in text analytics and AI for about 15 years, primarily as it applies to federal government use cases. And Case, very glad to be presenting alongside with you again.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. The key points in this research, as you know, FDA received unstructured data, text data in both the pre-market as well as the post-market of the drug development life cycle. Therefore, the question we are trying to address here, can deep learning improve the efficiency of identifying safety signal from patient narratives? The findings in this study, where we study almost 15,000 narrative observation in a clinical study, reports in which nearby 50% of these narratives have a signal of serotonin syndrome. So now the most successful deep learning we utilize, tested, achieved by almost 99% correct classification rates of serotonin syndrome. As most of you will argue that deep learning is a black box. However, we utilize machine learning methods to provide a layer of explanation to the deep learning result. The machine learning methods achieved almost 95% correct classification rate. The main conclusion of this research that deep learning and machine learning can improve the speed, accuracy, as well as the explanation of medical coding for adverse event. Tom? Now, so this work actually is a collaboration between SAS and FDA on the FDA adverse event reporting systems. It contains detailed free text narrative on adverse event occurring to the patient subject. As most of you know, manual review of these documents, which some of these submissions can be 100 of pages, it will be really hugely time consuming for our medical officer, safety evaluator, or other people work on drug development. So if we automated coding of adverse event, that will improve both the post-market and the pre-market safety review of FDA regulated drugs. Even though this work will be focused on the post-marketing, but this is also can be applied for the pre-market safety review. Next slide, Tom.
Yep. And our approach here is Case and I have worked together in the past. We presented this work at Fuse. We've applied text analytics and machine learning for drug adverse event detection, particularly related to drug-induced liver injury. So this initiative would leverage deep learning to classify one such event. In this case, we look for serotonin syndrome. And as we'll talk about later, we can subsequently use this for many such events, including DILI, cardiovascular cases. We'll mention the different deep learning methods we applied now for familiarity and go through it again later. TM-co-occur is one of our methods. It's a capability provided through SAS. An averaging method on top of TM-co-occur that took it to the document level. GLOVE, which is a pre-trained set of embeddings, and then topic weights, which is an SVD use case, comes more primarily straight out of SAS visual text analytics. And then we applied a machine learning method that Case and I have applied in the past, which would provide a layer of interpretability and validation to the models.
Okay, so now let's start our explanation about the case study, which is, as we said, is a serotonin syndrome. As you know, a simple scenario can be illustrated by a given adverse event report to the safety officer. Most of these adverse event report has at least at 10 different adverse events with each case. So the question is how we tag these adverse event or a combination of adverse event to this health condition rather than the other one. It's very difficult because these adverse event has a commonality among these different health conditions. So for instance, confusion or what we name headache, it can be really related to serotonin syndrome, mental health, or any other adverse event. So how we can really classify these combination of adverse event to be directly related to the serotonin syndrome with some assurance degree rather than related to the other health insurance. So that is the main focus of this research. Tom?
Yeah, so some of these texts, as Case indicated, can go several pages or many, many pages long. This is where the machine learning and deep learning approach trained on the right data can help differentiate, because you're looking at those symptoms can occur for a wide variety of conditions. But when we use the deep learning to really assess across these large narratives what's serotonin syndrome, what's not, that's where the deep learning, machine learning can really differentiate whether it's serotonin syndrome or another condition.
Okay, now, as we said, like we really utilize the adverse event reporting system first at the FDA. You know, this is a post-market data. It's very messy, it's unstructured. It's really, they don't have any schema. So we really need to do a lot of data preparation, data pre-processing before making this data ready for modeling. So we really done a lot of this preparation on the data pre-processing in order to make it ready for utilization, as well as in this data, we did some feature engineering and to create a target variable as well, tag this is as a serotonin syndrome or not. This is based on if this word serotonin syndrome appear in the narrative, as well as since the data we found that has a less value of serotonin syndrome narrative with really very scarce serotonin syndrome. So what we need to do this, we did oversampling in order to make this data ready for training and validation. Also, we split this data 60% for a training purpose and 40% for validation after we done the oversampling. This is a high level of data preparation, but also in the paper we have, you find a lot of what we have done on this part. Tom? So the first takeaway one, we really need to tell you, use all the tools in your toolkit. We are utilizing SAS VIA, which has all the tool in one, so we are proud like we leverage the SAS VIA in this research. Now, let's discuss our first deep learning method, which is involve the SAS-CAS TM co-occur action to enable term embeddings on a document corpus, similar to what available in Word2Vec and GloVe. However, as you know, Word2Vec and GloVe train model using sliding windows of words, such as 3 to 5 words immediately preceding and following terminology. So our first approach summary is, first, we invoke a document parsing algorithm, which is a SAS-CAS TM-MIND action on the training data set of narrative to compute an offset table. Next, we calculate term co-occurrence through the SAS-CAS TM co-occur action as a pairwise combination with every other term at the sentence level rather than a 3 to 5 word sliding window and other approaches. We generate association column to designate how strongly the terms are connected. In the third step, we generate the term embedding by applying the SAS-CAS TM-CFD action on the term-by-term matrix of association calculated in the previous stage. This essentially compresses the matrix down into the lower dimension space of a numerical interval value organized by term row and term column, which can be fed into the deep learning model. Then, Finally, through the application of RNN, recurrent neural network, each input document will be weighted on how much similarity it has to each of these given factors. Tom?
Yep. The second method we applied pretty much took the results from the TM co-occur method, took a table from that algorithm that essentially identified term co-occurrence at the individual levels, essentially like 5 million individual term co-occurrences, and projected that back onto the documents using an averaging approach. So at the end of it, we ended up getting something very similar to what you would do with the traditional single vector decomposition algorithm, although it was a bit refined from the co-occurrences. And it gave us essentially 200 dimensions per document, which we could then apply deep learning to using a convolutional neural network. Typically, we'll use, in this use case, a recurrent neural network, RNN, for term level document, term level embedding approaches, and then a CNN for doc level approaches.
So back to our takeaway one, use all the tools in your toolkit. So now let's back to what done in SAS. Prior research done by the Jim and Russell in 2019 suggests that document-level singular value decomposition approach can outperform the combination of term embedding and RNN approach, but not extensively. So, as a point of comparison to the sliding window approach of the TM co-occur and the glove approach, we choose to generate a topic using visual text analytics within SAS VIA and to provide the topic weight for each training narrative from first as input to the convolutional neural network. This method is closest to the classical approach toward deep learning. Instead of providing term embedding, each document has been converted to a set of numerical variables which are used to train and validate the deep learning model. Tom?
And then the fourth method we applied was then trying to use off-the-shelf embeddings. As we'll see in the results later, these didn't outperform the cases where we use customized embeddings. So to test out our off-the-shelf embeddings, we applied GLOVE. GLOVE is a set of pre-trained embeddings across a wide variety of documents, but the amount of medical text in that we used to train it or was used to train it is minimal. So we used a 100-dimension and 300-dimension embeddings approach using GLOVE. Because this was a term-level embedding approach, we could apply an RNN, very similar to what we applied with TM co-occur. You can see those models represented in that table here. Using the RNN for both GLOVE and TM co-occur, we tried a variety of different iterations and finally settled on gate recurrent units, ended up giving us the best results, which we tuned through hyperparameter tuning. It took us a while, there was a bit of an art to it, but eventually, yes, we did find and get the right model. The high-level architecture of that is represented in this table here. Case?
So, takeaway 3, follow a hybrid approach to text analytics. So this is really very important as you see it later in our approach. Tom, if you go to the second slide, please. So now, as I said, people will say, hey, your model is really black box. No, since we use now SAS VIA, so why we don't apply a layer of interpretation on the deep learning? That was, even though our model were able to classify the event, but the machine learning Boolean rules approach provide a layer of interpretability of why event classified in one pocket or in the others. As you know, medical officer or safety officer, they don't need, yeah, this is serotonin syndrome or not. Why? Tell me why. That is, we really work with a system matter expertise, and we done 5 iterations on identifying and in order to refine the model and identify new patterns. The goal is to generate a model that identifies cases which indicate serotonin syndrome but had not been classified as such with a keyword in the narrative. As we said earlier, some of the commonality of these adverse events, even though there is no clearly saying serotonin syndrome, but the combination of these adverse events is that can be referred to the serotonin syndrome. So that is the essence of using the machine learning Boolean rule approach to add a layer of explanation to the deep learning model. Tom?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly what Case said. We tried several iterations of this, and each iteration, we would work with a subject matter expert to help us refine the models a little bit more and a little bit more. When we refined the models, the misclassification rate went up. However, it identified more and more terms that were related to each other that identified serotonin syndrome in the narratives. For an example, this is a set of terms that tended to co-occur for the first pass after we moved all references to serotonin syndrome, and it came up with rules like if depression, tremor, and tachycardia is present in the narrative, with these drugs that we were looking at, 93% of the time it was serotonin syndrome. So these are cases where we could apply the model, look back over maybe clinical study reports that hadn't been necessarily tagged and flag them as, there's potentially a risk for serotonin syndrome here. Again, this doesn't outperform the deep learning models. Those did the best, but it provides that layer of feedback to the subject matter experts, validates that models that it picks up very similar syndromes to what a SME would look for.
Okay, now it's all the money of SAS and FDA reside. So I really need this to make it a big slide of the show. And thank you, Tom, for putting this together. So please note that the result in this study for one case and further experiment will help us understand if this approach is going to give us the best result for other health condition, not only for serotonin syndrome. So let's focus now on to explain these results by better to consider the first two methods, TM co-occur average and the deep learning on topic weight, separately from the other two methods, TM co-occur RNN and the Global 300 dimension. The first two methods were deep learning model based on convolutional neural network architecture. The difference between the two is regarding the amount of contextual information that has gone into creating the embeddings that serve as input for this model. In the TM co-occur average method, embeddings has been generated on a common term with respect to nearby other words that they have co-occurred with. The degree of nearness is specified at the time of running the action and is actually within 8 to 10 words. This is more contextual information than the topic weight generated on the entire document in the second method, where all terms that occurred in the document have been taken into account. While we always note that this is just one result and many more experiments on a wider data are recommended before saying anything for sure. It seems that this is maybe the reason for the better performance of TM co-occur averaging over topic weight. The next two methods were based on the deep learning model using recurrent neural network architecture. We should note that CNN and RNN are two different approaches, and secondly, we could definitely increase the level of complexity, parameters, or maybe can lead to the RNN providing better result on CNN. However, as we said, this research about contextual, not about generalization. So embedding that are trained on the local data, it's has more essence on explanation than the embedding generated on the sliding window or on the total document. So as expert in this field, I think it's generating on the local data is better than document because give us a better explanation for these adverse event occurrence. So that is the takeaway from this research and from this results. Tom?
Fantastic case. Yeah. And as we finished doing this work, we have many points to talk about. Case and I came up with a few key ones for you here. The first one really being that, hey, this approach is scalable and is production ready for health conditions other than serotonin syndrome. We could apply this, as we mentioned earlier, to some previous work around drug-induced liver injury, cardiovascular cases, and a variety of other syndromes. We really wanted to also look in the future about, hey, we ran the machine learning model next to the DL model, but what if we created an ensemble model where, we had this Boolean rule approach? as well with the deep learning models. Where models disagreed, we could flag for manual review and possible misclassification. The machine learning model could provide a layer of interpretation in there. And then finally, we evaluated that the pre-trained models didn't do as well as the customized models where we trained the term embeddings, but there are capabilities out there like BERT and BioBERT where we could leverage the best of pre-trained and customized embeddings. And this would be an interesting area for future study.
Finally, we really would like to thank, first I would like to thank SAS for collaborating with FDA on this research, and this is a great result, will help the community to understand how we utilize this technology in addressing a most challenging problem that we encounter every day. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to present on the SAS Global Forum, even though this year virtually, but we hope the better that we pass this pandemic and we are back together. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. We welcome your questions. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for that, guys. I have some questions. There are some questions for the audience. Question number one: what business process do they want to replace with this code?
Okay, thank you so much for attending this talk. Actually, to answer this question, we are not trying to replace any current process for reviewing drugs or post-marketing from the pharmacovigilance. We are trying to use new technology for understanding the data and give a better vision about what this data has, as well as we are trying to expedite the process of the manual review. As you know, like most of these reports come from FAIRS database, which is the adverse event. So what we're really trying is what is the best practice to expedite the manual review from our medical officer, safety officer, whatever. So at this point, we are not studying. So as you know, also this a case study based analysis. So it's not like a global analysis for all the cases. We're only using a serotonin syndrome, but this is as my colleague Tom said, we are trying to enlarge the use case for another such as liver injury and such on. Thank you.
Why only focus on serotonin syndrome but not other syndromes?
So that's a very good one. So as you know, sometimes you really need to start simple from the well-known defined problem. So you know you have your system set that you can really interpret it well. So when you build anything, any new technology start with a use case where you really understand in some level the problem, and then you apply the technology, because you cannot say build unknown on unknown. You really have to have something known, which is from the science, serotonin syndrome, but the technology we don't know how this will be applied for the science. So we really start with the simple case and then we build on it. As I said, this is a pilot or a use case, but we really would like to go for a more complicated cases, such as drug-induced liver injury, how this can be applied. So this is like the first stage. There is several stages will come in the future.
And can you leverage other type of algorithms in deep learning, and how will you test it?
So this is really very good question. So you know, like deep learning is a big field. Like people can have different algorithm, different setting, different specification. So at this point, as I said in our result, we're really focusing on RNN and convolutional neural network. We really did not go beyond these other methods. So, so for example, maybe somebody need to replicate our analysis if he has such level of data, we have it, and they said, oh, okay, I use another method, it's give you better result than you. That is possible because we did not have extensive application. But in our refinement, we really get trying now to improve this method, give more accuracy, more interpretability. Also, we are trying to tune the model that is will fit our system matter expertise expectation.
Yeah, there is a question in the channel, and in the example of the serotonin syndrome, does the model suggest risk factors based on the concomitant use of serotonin based medications?
So I really did not. Thanks. In the exact, let's me because I really did not. Does the model suggest risk factor based on concurrent use of serotonin raising medication? So, so this is, I think, more from the science. As I'm not a medical officer. I'm not a pharmacist, but I'm really from the technology, and I've tried to, how we say, bridge the gap between the science and technology. But uh, it's at this point, I really don't have a clear answer to Catherine Harbour. So I think, Catherine, this is really good. Like I can follow up on this one if you would like. And by the way, my email is there. And if you need to chat, I'm more than happy. But at this point, I really don't know.
Yeah, and there is another question. Is there all the code in SAS? Or is there any R or Python?
So that's good. So this is really important. As we said, SAS via is that you can now use open sources, R and Python. So really we are not only use SAS, actually we utilize Python as well in some of these analysis, pre-processing for the data. So yes, SAS and Python used in this research. That is the
And
good for VIA.
there is another question from Caroline. Is there any way of leveraging the model for something like electronic health record information where medical records are linked? Serotonin syndrome is a good choice, she said.
Yeah, actually, Catherine, I think we should connect a side because this is like really we are now trying to take EHR because this is like, streaming this one and this is can be connected together. So this is, I think, you gave us a good idea for our next system because we're going really to do so. Catherine, if you would like, I can share with you my email so we can really connect if you have idea. I'm actually writing my email on the chat.
And certainly there are more questions. There is a question regarding what is the question that you try to answer with this method?
I try to answer several questions, not one question. We are trying first is with this unstructured data we get it, can we use the deep learning method to understand this complicated data? As you know, sometimes people think in this report is a serotonin syndrome, but in the fact is not a serotonin syndrome. So can we really get a such clean safety signal in which like we really trigger a right serotonin syndrome from it's maybe with expectation is a serotonin syndrome. What is the threshold or the layer between the cases with a definite serotonin syndrome or non-serotonin syndrome? So this is one. The second thing is, as I said, we really need to expedite the process for reviewing because FDA, for example, receiving a tremendous amount on daily basis from post-marketing. You cannot review every case text, and then you say this is tag it as this case or that case. So we really need to expedite the manual review and give some. By the way, we are not isolating people from the loop. We really advance the timing that people need to review these cases.
And I think we're getting up to the end. There are so many good questions. Maybe we have time for one extra question. I think you mentioned that you use a machine learning Boolean rule approach for interpretability. Went through 5 interactions of refinement with a FDA subject matter expert. How could you automate this interpretation?
So this is really, as I said, like this is the first phase of the process. So we really take each result, we sit with the system matter expertise from the FDA to share with them the result. The result is come from them with some adjustment, say, no, this is should be serotonin, this. So then we study the historical feedback and then put it. So the idea is, as I just said to my answer, like we cannot isolate the human from the loop, but we can build a business rule based on learning experience, which is can be populating database where you can really see what if this is similar to other cases we already tackled in the previous run. So this is like really about building business rule databases for semi-automated the process, not fully automated, because we need the human in the loop. Machine cannot replace people.
Thank you, Kai, for joining us today to answer questions about your presentation, Developing a SAP Deep Learning MedDRA Encoder for Patient Narrative. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jose, and thank you, SAS, for giving us this opportunity. And I'm really willing to answer any question on my email address. And thank you so much, and have a great SAS Global Forum 2021.
Thank you very much.